Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Council meeting of the 25th of March 2024. We will commence by the reading of the Acknowledgement of Country. I call upon Councillor Galt to read the Acknowledgement of Country.
I acknowledge the Wurundjeri Woiwurrung people as the traditional owners and original custodians of this land and pay my respects to their elders, past and present, and elders from other communities who may be here today.
Thank you, Councillor Galt. Welcome to tonight's Council meeting. Before we commence the meeting, I request that all mobile phones are turned off or switched to silent. Thank you. The Council meeting is being live streamed on the Council website, so you can watch the proceedings of the meeting and councillor deliberations and voting. The meeting will also be recorded and made available on the Council website as soon as practicable after the meeting. My name is Councillor Lisa Hollingsworth. I'm the Mayor of the City of Boroondara and I chair this meeting. I will start by introducing my fellow councillors. Seated to my left, the horseshoe table of the Council chamber, is Councillor Jim Park, Councillor Nick Stavrou, Councillor Wes Galt, and Councillor Di Gillies. And on the opposite side, we have Councillor Cynthia Watson, Councillor Gary Thompson, Councillor Jane Addis, Councillor Susan Biggar, and Councillor Victor Gold. Victor Franco, sorry. Councillor Victor Franco. I also acknowledge in attendance this evening our Chief Executive Officer, Mr Philip Storer, on my right, and other officers in attendance tonight, including on my left, our Manager of Governance and Legal, Mr Brian Wee. I will now move to apologies. Mr Wee, are there any apologies for this evening?
Through you, Madam Mayor, Councillor Felicity Sinfield is on a leave of absence for this meeting.
Thank you. Item 1, adoption and confirmation of minutes for the meeting held on the 26th of February 2024. Councillors, I am in search of a motion to adopt and confirm the minutes. Councillor Stavrou.
So moved, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. And Councillor Gillies?
Seconded, thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Yeah. Is there anyone opposed to the minutes? I see no opposition. I will put that motion to the vote. Can I have a declare of hands shown? And I declare that motion carried. Thank you. Item 2, declaration of conflict of interest of any councillor or council officer. Councillors and officers, does anyone wish to declare a conflict for this evening? Councillor Gillies.
Thank you, Chair. I have a conflict in general business regarding a leave application.
Thank you. And does anyone else wish to declare a potential conflict? No? Okay, thank you. We'll move to item 3, deputations, presentations, petitions and public submissions. Mr Wee, are there any deputations?
Through you, Madam Mayor, there is one petition relating to a dog water station and improved fencing at Kew Reservoir Reserve.
Thank you. Councillors, I again am in search of a motion to receive and note the petition as appearing on the screen behind me. Do I have anyone prepared to move the motion? Councillor Addis?
Happy to so move, Mayor.
Thank you. And seconder, Councillor Galt, I see your light on.
So seconded, Mayor.
Thank you. Is there anyone opposed? I see no lights on. I will put that motion to the vote. Can I see a show of hands? I declare that motion carried. Thank you. Item 4, informal meetings of councillors. Councillors again. I am in search of someone to move the motion in relation to the informal meeting of councillors, which is not shown on the screen, but I believe it's in your reports. Councillor Thompson.
Happy to move the motion that's on the screen.
Thank you. And Councillor Gillies?
Happy to second things, Chair.
Thank you very much. Thank you. We move to, oh, sorry. Is there anyone opposed to that? And I see no opposition. I'll put that motion to the vote. I declare that carried. Thank you. Public question time. Council encourages the submission of public questions prior to 12 p.m. on the day of the meeting. Questions submitted prior to 12 noon will be provided with a detailed verbal response as well as a response in writing. Those submitted after 12 p.m. will receive a verbal response if possible, but will otherwise be taken on notice for a more comprehensive written response to be provided in due course. Mr. Wee, do we have any public questions?
Through you, Madam Mayor, this evening we have 7 questions submitted by 3 people.
Thank you. I will proceed with the first question submitted by Mr. Dean Hurlington. The subject matter is waste enforcement costs, actions and revenue. Mr. Hurlington submitted 3 questions about waste enforcement costs, actions and revenue. These 3 questions were disallowed under Rule 55.2 of the Governance Rules because they were not first asked in writing to a councillor or a member of council staff more than 10 working days before this meeting and do not relate to a matter on the agenda for the current council meeting. Mr. Hurlington, you will receive a written response to your question in due course. Thank you. The next question is from Ian Hundley. Mr. Hundley, are you in the gallery this evening? I see you there in the gallery. Thank you for your attendance. Subject matter, public consultation on Burundara Council budgets. Thank you for your question. The question is allowed in accordance with Chapter 2 of the Governance Rules with irrelevant parts removed to allow the question to be read. The question is, please advise whether Council, or Burundara Council, will be receiving public submissions on Council's annual budget and subsequent budgets. I call upon the Chief Financial Officer, Ms. Amy Mantali, to respond to the question.
Thank you, and through you, Mayor. Council is yet to make a formal decision regarding consultation for the 24-25 budget and will make this decision at the appropriate point in time. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Hundley, you will receive a written response to your question in due course. The next question is also from Mr. Hundley. Subject is playing schedules on the notice board at Greythorn Park. Thank you for your question. This question is allowed in accordance with Chapter 2 of the Governance Rules. The question is, for the assistance of general park users, and not only for those who may use QR codes, could the early placement of a notice on the main notice board at Greythorn Park be arranged to advise the times when the oval is not occupied by tenant sporting clubs? I call upon the Director of Community Support, Ms. Kate McCaughey, to respond to the question.
Thank you, Mayor. While Council has previously installed information regarding times of use for ovals on notice boards at parks, this information can quickly become out of date given the resources required to keep signage updated at grounds across Burundara. Council is therefore transitioning to QR codes across our grounds, which will allow us to provide more up-to-date information. While this is being finalised for Greythorn Park, we will arrange for signage to be installed, given the current schedule of use. This will be done once winter allocations are finalised in the next week. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McCaughey. Mr. Hundley, you will receive a written response in due course. Thank you. The next question is from Lee Norton, Burundara Reconciliation Network. Subject, Canterbury Community Precinct Heritage Centre naming. Mr. Norton, are you in the gallery? Yes, I see you there. Thank you for attending. And thank you for your question. This question is allowed in accordance with Chapter 2 of the Governance Rules, with the relevant parts removed to allow the question to be read. The question, can Council confirm that the Wurundjeri Woi Cultural Heritage Aboriginal Corporation abbreviated to the WWCHAC, was not advised that the consultation had resulted in an alternate naming after esteemed Aboriginal leader, long-term resident of Burundara, nor informed that John Butler Mailing, as an early settler in the area, sorry, bear with me for a moment. Thank you. I was just seeking clarification. There's two questions here from Mr. Norton. I will read the first question and commence again. The question is, as required by the naming rules, has Council or have the groups who proposed the name Mailing sought and/or received approval from the family descendants of John Butler Mailing for the naming proposal recommendation item 7.6 of the agenda? I call upon the Director of Community Support, Ms Kate McCaughey, to respond to the question.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, approval has been sought and received from a direct descendant of John Butler Mailing.
Thank you. And Mr Norton, you will receive a written response to your question in due course.
And this is the second question. Can Council confirm?
Thank you.
And then Kate McCaughey will reply.
Thank you. All right, Mr Norton, your second question is, can Council confirm that the Wurundjeri Wurrung Cultural Heritage Aboriginal Corporation would have stated a preference for naming after an Aboriginal person if they had been advised that the consultation had resulted in an alternative naming after an esteemed Aboriginal woman, leader, long-term resident of Burundara?
The question will be answered by Kate McCaughey.
Yeah. Now I will ask our Director of Community Development, Kate McCaughey, to please respond to the question. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
But just before that happens, Chair, surely that question calls for speculation in order to be ruled out of order.
I will ask Mr Wee to respond to that, but I believe governance are satisfied that it meets the guidelines. Look, I will accept the question. Thank you, Councillor Park, but I'll accept the question.
Could I just hear the question again, please?
Can Council confirm that the Woiwurrung Cultural Heritage Aboriginal Corporation would have stated a preference for naming after an Aboriginal person if they had been advised that the consultation had resulted in an alternative naming after an esteemed Aboriginal woman, leader, long-time resident of Burundara?
Well, Chair, I restate my objection. I don't think it's the role of council officers to speculate in a public forum, and unless the proposed answer is, I don't know because I can't speculate, the question ought to be ruled out of order.
Mr Park, it's my understanding, or Councillor Park, it's my understanding that the officers have had discussions with the person who has submitted the question and they're happy to respond. So I'm happy to accept the question and I'll ask Ms McCaughey to please respond. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Council consulted with the Wurundjeri Woi-wurrung Heritage Aboriginal Corporation in regards to this matter on 2 occasions, in December 23 and February 24. This discussion included outlining all feedback received on the naming proposal, including requests to consider other names. It was noted that these suggestions were feedback and did not become alternative options for consideration. The Wurundjeri elders advised they were comfortable with the name Mailing Heritage Centre. They further advised in consultation in February 24 that if Council was considering an Aboriginal name, their preference would be for a name using the Woi-wurrung language. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms McCaughey, and thank you, Mr Norton, for your question. You will receive a written response in due course. We go to item 6, and I believe that has exhausted all questions. I don't think we've missed anything. Is that correct, Mr Wee? Right. So we'll go to item number 6, notice of motion. Mr Wee, do we have any notices of motion?
Through you, Madam Mayor, no notices of motion this evening.
Thank you. Item 7, presentation of officer reports. On the screen behind me, councillors, we can see the list of presentation of officers' report. Now, we do have an opportunity to consider some of these questions en bloc. I put forward a proposal with the support of councillors that the opportunity to put en bloc is 7.1. 7.1 is the Security Guard Patrol and Response Services contract. 7.3, the Mobile Telephony and Data Services contract. 7.4, recommendations of Audit and Risk Committee meeting. And 7.5, the January 2024 monthly financial report. Councils, I'm in search of a motion if there is support to put those items en bloc. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, I'm happy to move those items that you've listed en bloc.
Thank you. And seconder, Councillor Addis.
I'm happy to second, thanks, Mayor.
Thank you. Any councillors opposed to this proposal? I see no opposition. I'll put that motion to the vote. Can I see a show of hands for those in favour? That is carried unanimously. Thank you. Now, to the members of the community, please be assured that Council has been provided with and very carefully reviewed each of these reports. Council is progressing these reports in this way because they agree with the content of the report and the officer recommendation. Thank you. So we will move to agenda item 7.2, the Mont Iris Estate and Environs Precinct, consideration to adoption of heritage overlay. The officers presenting on this report is Ms. Rachel Bring and Brian, thank you. And Ms. Bryan is a strategic planner. So please, if you'd like to proceed, thank you.
Thank you, Council and Madam Mayor. Good evening. Tonight's report is to seek Council's adoption of Amendment C394 BORO to the Boroondara Planning Scheme following the Urban Planning Delegated Committee decision at its meeting on 19th of February 2024. Amendment C394 BORO seeks to implement the recommendations of the Mont Iris Estate and Environs Precinct peer review prepared by GJM Heritage by including 3 precincts and 2 individually significant properties in the heritage overlay on a permanent basis. On 19th of February 2024, the UPDC resolved to endorse the response to the panel recommendation and refer the amendment to an ordinary meeting of Council for adoption. Officers recommend Council adopts Amendment C394 as exhibited and resolves to submit the amendment to the Minister for Planning for final approval. Thank you, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Bryan. Councillors, are there any questions for Ms. Bryan? I see no lights on. Councillors, I'm then in search of a motion. For the motion put before us on the screen. Councillor Thompson.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Yes, I'm happy to move the officer's recommendation that's on the screen.
Thank you. And do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Franco. Is there anyone in opposition? And Councillor Thompson, I'll ask you first of all, would you like to speak to your motion?
Yeah, and thank you, Madam Mayor, and I recognise this estate actually covers both Solway Ward and Gardner Ward as well, so Councillor Franco may like to say a few words. Look, I'd just like to thank the officers for what's been quite a long journey with regards to this estate. It started off at, the previous edition of this started off at around 286 properties and got dissolved down to 3 smaller precincts of about 86 properties in total. But what we now see is reflective of much greater intact precincts of contributory nature, with a couple of individually significant properties in the mix. I recognise this has been a challenge for particularly my community, going through not only this once, but in some instances going through this twice. But I think Council has landed on something that will provide a legacy for the protection of these properties into the future. So I'm very happy to recommend this to my colleagues.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. Councillor Franco, would you like to speak now or reserve your right?
I think I'll be the only other person speaking. So I agree with all the comments that Councillor Thompson has made, and I simply add the additional point that this is effectively the last of the gap studies in terms of precincts that were commenced in 2018. So it brings that program effectively to a close. And it's incumbent on now Council to consider what we do going forward, but I'm very pleased to see this concluded. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Franco. Now, is there anyone in opposition? I see no opposition. I'll put this motion to the vote. Can I see a show of hands?
Chair, can you ask for those in support or against it? You're not asking for a show of hands.
Can I see a show of support for who's in favour, please? Thank you. All right. I see that is carried unanimously. Thank you. The next item is 7.6, the Canterbury Community Precinct Heritage Centre naming, and the Director of Community Development, Ms McCackey, and Manager Fiona Brown are here to speak to this agenda item. Ms Brown, would you like to commence with your presentation? Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Good evening, and through you, Madam Mayor. The purpose of this report is to outline the feedback received during the community consultation on the naming proposal, which is attachment 1, and to seek endorsement of the Canterbury History Group and the Surrey Hills Historical Society's request to name the Heritage Centre at the Canterbury Community Precinct, the Mailing Heritage Centre, which is attachment 2. As part of the Canterbury Community Precinct Stage 2, the Canterbury Library at 190A Canterbury Road, Canterbury, is being redeveloped for the purpose of a heritage centre and a meeting space. The Heritage Centre's key tenants include the Canterbury History Group and the Surrey Hills Historical Society, including their collections. On the 18th of May last year, the Canterbury History Group and the Surrey Hills Historical Society submitted a request to Council for a suggested name for the building. Upon this request, Council undertook additional research to verify the suitability of the request prior to presentation to Council and a community consultation. This is attachment 3. In line with the naming policy, the community consultation was conducted from the 10th of November to the 11th of December 2023. It's important to note that the consultation sought feedback on the proposed name, Mailing Heritage Centre. Other potential names for the Heritage Centre were not being sought as part of this process. Council received a total of 77 submissions, some of which proposed alternate names, with the responses including 42% supporting the Mailing Heritage Centre, 27% supporting the suggestion of naming after an esteemed Aboriginal woman leader, 22% wanting an Aboriginal name or word, and 9% suggesting another name for the centre. Almost 70% of the Surrey Hills and Canterbury residents supported the proposed naming of the building the Mailing Heritage Centre, and this included the tenants at the Canterbury Community Precinct. When considering the responses from the consultation, there was support both for the naming proposal as well as alternatives that focus on Aboriginal heritage and culture. Council consulted with the Wurundjeri Woiwurrung Cultural Heritage Aboriginal Corporation on the proposed name Mailing Heritage Centre on 2 occasions. We had a third meeting this morning to confirm their earlier advice. So based on the original request, the background research and the consultation feedback, officers recommend what is on the screen behind me, and that is the council resolved to formally name the building at 190A Canterbury Road, Canterbury, the Mailing Heritage Centre. Secondly, to register the name Mailing Heritage Centre with geographic names Victoria. Thirdly, to advise the Canterbury History Group and the Surrey Hills Historical Society their place naming application has been endorsed by council. To thank participants in the Mailing Heritage Centre community consultation process. Fifthly, to continue to explore opportunities for the use of Woiwurrung language in future naming proposals with the Wurundjeri Woiwurrung Cultural Heritage Aboriginal Corporation. And finally, to receive an update from officers regarding the operational review of place naming guidelines to make it clearer about naming options being sought as part of the consultation process. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Brand. Councillors, are there any questions? Councillor Franco.
Thank you, Mayor. In the attached letter to the report dated 18 May 2023, the first paragraph of that letter, which comes from the Canterbury History Group to the Manager of Community Planning and Development at the City of Boroondara, says that this letter is to formally respond to the request to propose a new name for the Heritage Centre. When did Council go to the Canterbury History Group to ask them to propose a new name, or how long before the receipt of this letter?
Through you, Madam Mayor, we didn't actually approach them about naming the Heritage Centre. They certainly indicated to us that they would like to do this, and we were speaking to them about the timing related to that.
So just to be clear, their letter, the opening paragraph, is incorrect. We did not ask them to propose a name.
No, we didn't.
Okay, that's rather odd. So nothing was put in writing, no conversations with them, nothing.
We were aware through the process that they were interested in naming the Heritage Society. We had a working name for the building, and they indicated to us that they had a preference for another name.
Mm-hmm. It's odd that they would write a factually incorrect letter to Council, so categorically incorrect. But that's what they've done, yes?
We can't comment on that.
Well, you've just commented that it is factually incorrect.
We can't comment on a third party's correspondence to us. Fiona just explained what the process was.
Okay.
As we experienced it.
Okay. Another issue that probably requires some clarification. This report reads with a tone that effectively we've received an application, we being the City of Boroondara, and our hands are tied and we have to progress the request regardless of our will, etc. It is the case, is it not, that it's up to this council to determine whether or not we progress with a naming proposal for our facility?
Council's required to carry out an assessment according to the naming rules, and we would have to have a good reason not to progress that if it met all those naming rule requirements.
And to be clear, an assessment means what? Going out to public consultation or simply reviewing whether or not the name is acceptable to proceed for further public consultation?
So we carried out an assessment in line with our naming policy. There's a number of principles or naming rules that sit within the naming policy, and as long as they are in line with that, they are not offensive, then we can proceed to consultation.
Sorry, I might just add, Councillor Franco, if I could, we also do some research and do due diligence at that stage too, just to sort of understand the background of what the proposal. So there's a due diligence and research piece that happens at that point before we bring it into the chamber for discussion at briefing and then going out to consultation.
And that makes perfectly good sense, and from what I can see is in line, except that the report has a tone as if council has its arm twisted and has
Point of
no
order,
choice.
Chair. This is not a question, this is commentary.
So
Councillor
I'm
Franco,
concerned.
can you
okay.
go to your question, please? Thank you.
Okay, I'll go to another question for the moment. The family of John Malling, have they been consulted?
Yes, they have been consulted.
Councillor Franco, I believe that was answered by Ms
Okay,
McCackey earlier.
Okay, and they're supportive, yes?
Yes, and they've done that in writing.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Franco. Councillors, I see no other lights on. Councillor Gold, yes.
I thought I had it on, my apologies. Given that we went out for the basic consultation locally with the name Mailing, I'd just like to ask the simple question, are there any policies, council policies, such as the reconciliation agreements that we have that require us, where possible, to seek the use of Aboriginal names?
Well, in that policy, we have certainly indicated that we want to look at opportunities to do that. On this occasion, the request was from a community group for a specific name, and the alternative would have been to look at another name to go out to consultation with, and we are mindful of feedback that we have had from the Wurundjeri that their preference is not to have an Aboriginal and a non-Aboriginal name consulted on together.
Thank you, Councillor Gold. Councillors, I see no other lights on.
I have my light on.
Sorry, it's just come up again. I think the audio is playing up a little bit this evening.
It is, it keeps coming off.
Councillor, Councillor Franco, I know you've already asked several questions, so are you able to contain this to just one?
I'm happy for Councillor Addis to ask her questions, and then I can ask my questions afterwards.
Councillor Addis.
Thank you. Like Councillor Gold, I did think I had my light on, but anyway, my
Yeah.
mistake maybe.
They seem to be going on and off. I'm sorry.
you.
They're
Not at
flickering
all.
up and down. Yes. please stop.
I'm seeking further clarification about the timing, and I just need to give a tiny preamble, but there is a question. My recollection is that the groups contacted us first by email. So what I'm wondering is if the letter that we were referring to was further down the track. I can't remember the time sequence, but I'm pretty sure I remember an email from Sue Buchanan, the president of the Surrey Hills History Group.
Ms Brown?
Yes, look, I can't be definitive about that, but I do know that we were having conversations with them about the fact that they were interested in putting in a naming proposal, given we had a working name, that they preferred that we not proceed with.
Okay, thank you. And Chair, I have a motion when the time is right.
Thank you, Councillor Addis. Now, Councillor Franco, Councillor Bigger's light has come on as well. So would you like Councillor Bigger to ask her question first?
Mine is one simple question.
All right, please proceed.
When was the last naming policy that was brought before council? I haven't seen one in the term that I've been elected, and I'm curious when the last one was.
Our most recent one we adopted last year. I think the date for the adoption's in the council report. So yes, a naming policy has to come to council.
Not the policy, a name proposal. So we named a place or space or street.
In relation to this particular one?
No, when was the last naming? We have a naming proposal here before us. I'm curious when the most recent prior naming proposal was brought before the elected council. Approximate would be fine.
The one related to the square near Surrey Hills railway station might have been the last one that came to council.
In recent years.
So the policy was adopted by council in February 2023. I know because that was my first council meeting here. There's really only been two significant naming processes involving this new policy. So one was the Surrey Hills Square, and this is the second one. Daniel, have you got any other, as Chair, as Director of Places and Spaces, around that process?
Through you, Madam Mayor, only to say the naming of the open space in Surrey Hills has not been presented to council at this point for a formal decision. It's been the subject of a councillor briefing and discussion paper.
So I'm just left with my question. When was aside from the policy, do we know when the last naming proposal was brought before the elected council? I presume it's been quite some years. I've been on this council for over 3 years. So, and look, if you don't know, that in a sense is indicative of just how long ago it has been.
We'll take that on notice. Thank you, Councillor Franco.
Thank you, Councillor Franco. Councillor Biggar.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. My question is following on Councillor Galt's question. I'm interested to know whether officers, based on your response about the fact that that there was only one name because that name was proposed to us, and the Wurundjeri have made it clear that it's not their preference for us to effectively put up a Wurundjeri name next to a non-Indigenous name, which is fine. I'm just interested to know whether officers feel there's a need, that this process has highlighted the need for any review of the policy, or are we confident about the way that process might go forward, given that within our reconciliation strategy, we do have a priority, and even within our naming policy, a preference for looking for Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander names.
That's why we have two of the recommendations up on the screen. The sixth one is to review our processes so that we can be a little clearer. This is, if you like, for our purposes, the first use of this policy. And then, as I indicated, there was definite interest and support for Aboriginal naming. So we've spoken with the Wurundjeri about how we can work with them to identify future naming opportunities.
Great, thank you. So that update will come back to us either in a CBD or something. Great, thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Biggar. Councillor Watson.
Has the motion been moved yet or just foreshadowed?
Councillor Addis just foreshadowed.
When the motion's moved, then I'll put my light on.
Okay. I see no other lights on, so Councillor Addis.
I'd like to move the officer's recommendation up on the screen as my motion, please.
Thank you. And Councillor Watson, did you foreshadow?
I'd like to second the motion.
The motion. Thank you for that. To assist the mover of the motion, is there anyone opposed? I see two hands raised. We will now go into debate. Councillor Addis, would you like to speak to your motion?
Thank you very much, Chair. My strong memory is that this was initiated by the history groups, and it was quite a gratifying process because two groups worked together and were able to come up with something that they both supported. And I think it's really important to note that history is what these groups are. It's their job and it's their purpose of the whole centre. And it was they who did their research and came up with the name that's being proposed. And when we went to the community, the people who are likely to make use of this centre, who are going to gain pleasure from coming and visiting and being involved, fairly clearly supported the name that the history groups had chosen. So there seems a very strong reason to go with this name. There's also a lot of background to why John Mayling is appropriate to be recognised. I totally acknowledge that in other situations an Indigenous name may in fact be appropriate, but I haven't come across any evidence, nothing that I've had presented to me, that creates a link that would justify that. So Councillor Watson loves the history of this area, and I'm sure she would welcome the opportunity to tell us a little bit about John Mayling and the link, but suffice it to say that he was quite instrumental in organising this building, which was originally the Canterbury Library. So it's a bit of a full circle to acknowledge him in the naming. So I certainly very much support this, and thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Councillor Addis. Councillor Watson, would you like to speak now as the seconder or reserve your right?
Oh, look, I think I'll speak now, given that Jane's mentioned history. I think this is a deeply appropriate name, and Councillor Addis touched on one of the reasons why. And this particular building, which now will have life as part of its use is the Toy Lending Library. This was one of Victoria's first free libraries. In 1856, the state government put it back on local councils to provide community facilities such as a library. But it wasn't until 1946 that anything like this, and this came after a substantial free library movement, received royal assent in 1946. So here we have the Shire of Burundara who began this process, and then the city of Camberwell, when it was formed in 1905 and 1906, opened the free Canterbury Library, one of the very first around. It's forward-thinking. John Butler Mayling built that building. He was the first mayor of Camberwell when it was formed. The connections with this site and this building and its ongoing use by the historic societies and by the Toy Lending Library really sits very comfortably with naming it the Mayling Heritage Centre. While we have other spaces in our municipality that do recognise John Mayling as one of our early residents, longest serving mayor in the city of Camberwell and also in the Shire of Burundara president, for me, really it's that connection with it being the first free library that really says to me how incredibly appropriate to call it the Mayling Heritage Centre and maintain that connection with our history. So thank you for listening. I don't see anybody having fallen asleep, so I definitely support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Watson. Councillor Biggar.
Thank you very much. I also appreciate the opportunity for us to be naming this centre. I think the history of the area is very important, and I'm very glad that we have an opportunity to name the Heritage Centre. I also want to acknowledge John Mayling's role in that history, and that obviously that role is very, very important. However, for me, as good and important as a person John Mayling may have been, I feel that he's already very well recognized and appreciated through having a major road named after him and the ward named after him. I think we could focus, and we have, much of our discussion has been focused on the opportunity to potentially use an Indigenous or Wurundjeri Woiwurrung name for this building, and that is, I do think, a missed opportunity. I also think that knowing the hugely disproportionate number of places that are named after men, just even putting aside the lack of a First Nations connection, I just cannot support naming another building after a man without even giving consideration of an appropriate woman from the area. Although I'm not sure we've done an audit in Boroondara, I know that in the city of Melbourne there are 580 statues, of which 2% are of women. As far as I'm aware, there would have been historically, as well as now, approximately 50% of the population would be women. So we are way underrepresented in that. I think that it's likely that that would be a similar proportion within Boroondara. I guess I'm also not completely comfortable with the process, and I do appreciate the work that officers have done. I acknowledge that this is effectively the first time in using this process, and so it's never going to be perfect, and I do appreciate that there's been a commitment put within this recommendation to consider the process and consider whether or not we need to make any changes to the process to tweak it and ensure that it's the best possible. But for me, I just see it as too much of a missed opportunity, both from the perspective of considering First Nations people who have been significant in that community, as well as the other 50% of the population who are generally not recognised. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Biggar. Councillor Franco, then Councillor Park.
Thank you, Mayor. The name that's proposed, Melling, is, if it's adopted, and I suspect it's likely this evening, is one that the elected council of the city of Boroondara will have chosen, assuming it does get adopted. It's not a name that has been forced upon us by the heritage societies, as I at least consider the report insinuates. I know the report can be read in detail in certain ways, but I think it provides a tone that Council Arms has been twisted and this name has been forced upon us. Let's be very clear, this is our facility, it's our decision, it's our site. If we had wanted to, we could have worked with the Heritage Society, we could have equally worked with the Woiwurrung Cultural Association, but if we were going to have worked with the Heritage Society, we could have put down some parameters. We could have said, we'd like to see a female name, we'd like to see an Indigenous name, but we didn't do that. We could have made that a very explicit requirement, and I think it's fairly clear, given the situation of the underrepresentation of females in public naming, and that's an issue, and our commitment in the reconciliation strategy as well to prioritise Indigenous names and persons. We haven't done that. And keep in mind, this is not just something that comes up regularly. Since this council has been elected 3.5 years ago, this is the first and only naming proposal that's coming before us. And when I asked when the most recent previous naming proposal came before this council, there's silence. It's that rare and that unusual for this to happen. And we're taking this opportunity to name our new facility after Melling, someone who has a ward already named after him, someone who has the main street there already named after him. And we can't think of anything else more creative and more appropriate. I actually think if this
Point
passes,
of order,
it's
please,
a dark
Chair.
day.
I'm uncomfortable. I believe this line of statement is designed to embarrass
I'm sure you
staff.
are uncomfortable,
I think that
Councillor Gillies,
that
but I'm free to
contravenes-
make the comments I
It
want.
contravenes our governance rules.
Anything I
83,
say that
1.1.3.
is inappropriate or
Excuse
doesn't
me,
agree with
Councillor
your
Franco.
views may...
So, sorry, could you please wrap up in 30 seconds? And if you could just take on board the comments from Councillor Gillies, thank you.
Which comments do you want me to withdraw?
If I can be, would you like me to refer to Governance Rules 83.1.1.3, must not accept motion, questions or statements aimed at embarrassing a councillor or member of council staff, and that is what
Who
I
is
feel-
being embarrassed by my
feel
comments
is-
about the
Councillor
inappropriateness?
Franco, can we please just wrap up, please?
Councillor.
Thank you.
No, we've had a point of order claiming that I have insulted council staff. I've not insulted council staff. I'm expressing my views on the
Councillor
policy.
Franco, I accept the point of order. If you could please just wrap
If
up
you
with a
accept
summary.
that
30
point of
seconds.
order, perhaps you can explain who has been insulted and in what way, and which councillor has been insulted
The
by
words
my
are
expressing.
aimed at embarrassing.
Thank you, Councillor Gillies.
The only councillor who would be embarrassed is someone who'd probably be embarrassed because of the because
Councillor
of
Franco,
their own
please,
views.
can we
So-
please use your 30 seconds wisely? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So I, urge my colleagues to vote against this motion. I think it would be a dark day if this is passed in terms of a naming policy proposal before us in this term. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Franco. Councillor Park.
I support the motion. I think it's unfortunate that there's some who are determined to always bring these debates down to race or gender. There's just no need, and the name that's been proposed is clearly entirely suitable. I mean, I don't know what they'd have us do. Perhaps it ought to be the Kylie Minogue Heritage Centre or the Dame Edna Heritage Centre, perhaps. But it really is quite unnecessary. The notion of a Aboriginal name has been canvassed. No appropriate candidates were put forward that had suitable connection, and so it isn't a situation where from this point forward the only people who would ever be the beneficiary of naming would be Aboriginal or women, or better still, Aboriginal women. I mean, that's ludicrous, and we need to be able to see past race and gender and look for what's actually appropriate, what's the connection with the place that's being named.
Thank you, Councillor Park. I see no other lights on. Councillor Addis, as the Mayor of the motion, would you like to summarise?
Thank you, Mayor. Look, I'd like to start by thanking the officers. They did genuinely, with great goodwill, put a lot of work into this and have tried very hard to explain the process they went through and how legitimate it was. There are probably a couple of things. It's probably worth one councillor reflecting on the unlikelihood that I would ever be forced into anything. That is not in my nature, to be forced into something. I feel quite confident with this. I'm supporting it because it is the right thing to do for this centre. There hasn't been any pressure. It's been a very pleasant process, and it's a shame that it's become a less pleasant process. It's worth noting that the reason this name is being chosen is that it just has such a link to the area. It just makes such good sense. We have jokingly talked about, I think John Mayling's wife's name was Jane, and we did vaguely think of calling it the John and Jane History Centre, but that would be my name and my husband's name, and entirely inappropriate. So let's just stick with the Mayling and enjoy the important link it has to our community and to the people who'll be using it, who actually suggested this name. So again, thank you to the officers.
Thank you, Councillor Addis. I will now put the motion. All those in favour? Thank you. Those against?
And I call a division.
Thank you. And anyone abstaining? Councillor Biggar, Councillor Thompson. Okay, so I will call for a division. So those in favour, if I can see your hands. All right, Councillor Hollingsworth, Councillor Park, Councillor Stavrou, Councillor Galt, Councillor Gillies, Councillor Watson, Councillor Addis. Those against, Councillor Franco, and those abstained, Councillor Biggar and Councillor Thompson.
Madam Mayor, I think you raised your hand, but you forgot to call your name out.
I called my name as the first name. I did call my name. Thank you. Councillors, I declare that motion carried. Thank you. Now, we move on to the next item, general business. And for general business, I do believe we have Councillor Gillies that has declared a conflict.
Is my up? Well, I'll declare a conflict in relation to my request for leave.
Right, thank you, Councillor Franco. If you would like to leave the chamber, thank you. All right, councillors, I am in search of a mover for the motion as appearing on the screen behind me. The council resolved to grant Councillor Di Gillies a leave of absence from council for the period of the 11th of April 2024 to the 14th of May 2024. Councillor Felicity Sinfield a leave of absence from council for the period of the 6th of April 2024 to the 24th of April 2024. And Councillor Victor Franco a leave of absence from council for the period from the 6th of June 2024 to the 24th of June 2024. I'm in search of a mover, and Councillor Galt.
So moved, Mayor.
Thank you. And seconder, Councillor Biggar.
I am happy to second. Can I just check that for Councillor Sinfield, it's not meant to include tonight, I presume? Okay, fine. Just clarify.
That was approved.
Thank you.
Done in
Happy
advance.
to second then.
Yeah, thank you very much. Any councillor opposed? I see no opposition. I will put that motion to the vote. I declare that carried unanimously. Thank you. Councillors, we'll first of all call Councillor Gillies and Councillor Franco back into the chamber. And if anyone has any other items of general business, if you can ponder on those while we're waiting for the other councillors to come in. Just waiting on Councillor Franco.
Madam Mayor, do we need to wait?
We can proceed. I'm sure Councillor Franco will come in due course. Councillors, is there any items of general business that anyone wishes to raise? I see no lights on, thank you. Any urgent business? There is no matters of urgent business. Confidential business? There are no matters of confidential business. I will now proceed to close this meeting. And I thank members of the gallery and those watching us online for attending this evening. Thank you for joining the meeting. And I now call this meeting closed at 7:40. 35 p.m. Thank you and good evening to everyone.